YouTube is just connecting.
Love it.
Okay,
Love
and we're live. Here we are. Welcome everyone to our virtual meetup. My name is Danielle Stein-Fairhurst. I am a financial modelling specialist. I'm based in Sydney in Australia, and tonight, we have two special guests joining us from the UK. So Kenny, we just cannot get enough of. I think this is the third time we have had you as a guest.
Yeah.
Wow. And Kenny, we haven't actually met in real life, have we?
No, we haven't met in real life.
We got very close, but we haven't.
Almost last year at or this year, I've lost track. This year at the Excel Summit, we nearly met, and it didn't happen. So one day, Danielle, one day.
One day we will get to meet, or you'll come to Australia, one or the other.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'll just introduce our speakers before I do that, I'll just tell you a little bit about how we're going to run this evening. Nothing too much out of the ordinary. We are live on Zoom, and we're also live on YouTube. If you're joining us on Zoom, you'll notice that there is a chat at the functionality at the bottom. So please just feel free to say hi and see who else is there. And it's a kind of a place where you guys can sort of chat and make comments. If there are any particular questions that really need addressing properly, then put those in the Q&A, and all three of us will be monitoring those, and we'll sort of try to sort of address that as we go. So just to introduce our speakers for today, Kenny Whitelaw-Jones has got several hats. You are a busy person. So Kenny is the founding partner of Gridlines, which is a financial modelling consultancy. He's also now the co-founder of the new financial modelling startup, Full Stack Modeler. So we talked about that a couple of weeks ago on the debate. And he is also the founder of Openbox, which is what we're sort of covering this evening, a new structured financial modelling environment that sits on top of Excel. And he's also joined by his colleague Iain Morrow, also from Gridlines. He is the lead developer for Openbox, and he is going to co-present together with Kenny. So I'm just going to launch a poll for those of you who are joining us on Zoom, just to get a bit of an idea of the experience of people who are joining us today on the line. So we'll just give that a few minutes for everybody to fill in that poll, and then I'm going to share those results. We'd just like to know what your experience is with modular building tools, so whether people have not used them at all, whether they've just used a little bit, or if you're actually a beta tester of Openbox. So, okay, it looks as if most people have had a chance to fill that in, and I'm just going to share the results. So it looks like 68% of people have never used a modular model build tool before. So that's quite interesting. Okay. All right, I'm going to pass over to you guys to take it away for today.
Thanks, Danielle.
Thanks, Danielle, and thanks for having us, and thanks for these sessions that you do. They're really great. We just really love what you do to kind of support the modeling community, and these are fantastic sessions. So thank you so much for all the work that you do. So look, we're going to talk a bit about Openbox today. We did a session, and there's a recording available of that where we a few months ago where we kind of challenged ourselves to build a model in 20 minutes, and we're not going to do that again. What we're going to do here is talk about the beta process that we've just been through, and then talk about Iain's going to do a quick demo of Openbox and how it's changed through the beta process. And then we're going to talk about our vision for Openbox, where it's going, and the crowdfunding, the equity crowdfunding process that we'll be doing over the next few months. So let me just share my screen, do that clumsy thing, and hopefully that works, and you can see. You'll give me a thumbs up if you can see that okay. Yeah, we all good?
Yep, looks good.
Okay, great. So look here, we're going to talk about what we learned in the beta process, our vision and our development roadmap, and the equity crowdfunding. And please free to chuck in questions as we go, and Danielle or Iain will interrupt me, and we'll hand over to you in a second to do a bit of a quick demo. So look, here's our hypothesis on Openbox. Excel is here to stay, at least for transaction modeling. But we all know that financial modeling takes too long and it's too risky. And we have the kind of Wired magazine article there because Excel errors have been really prominent in the media over the past few weeks. And there was a good article about it here. And so we know that the Excel errors are costly, and we know that modeling could be more efficient. And that's what we're trying to do with Openbox, is to make modeling more efficient for modelers. And we a few months ago launched a beta process, and we had 150 users over 3 rounds of the beta test the software, and we learned a lot from that. A few things that we learned are kind of basic hypotheses as validated by the beta users. We have a journey still to go on with Openbox. It's not the finished article yet, but our minimum viable product was validated. We see strong demand beyond our sector. So Gridline's really focus on infrastructure, project finance, energy. And we've kind of built the tool for us to begin with, kind of scratching our own itch around being able to build models and develop new models more rapidly. And we also saw that integration is really important with other systems, and Iain will talk a bit about that. And we got really useful feedback. Like any new software, there's a learning curve. And I think it's especially true for experienced modelers. Almost like it's the more experienced you are, the more efficient you already are in Excel, kind of like the harder it is to learn a new tool and kind of transition. So we have work to do to make it easier to use, and we know that onboarding is going to be really critical. And we saw some interesting use cases around model audit and model review. So people using Openbox to ingest a model so that it can then be subject to the test that Openbox just does automatically. And then we found the kind of overwhelming feedback was people really like the focus view, and Iain's going to demonstrate what that is, because that's just not a view that's possible in Excel. So super useful. We're really grateful. I know that some of the beta testers are on. We're really grateful for such active interaction and feedback from our beta testers. It was absolutely fantastic. I'm going to talk a bit more about the public beta, which is coming up. We made some changes. So there was some stuff during the beta feedback that we already could change. We improved the user interface. Iain will show that. There's still work to do on that, obviously, and look at software, it's never done, right? It can always be better. So, that's almost a given that there's still work to do. And users wanted more keystroke efficiency, and we're big on keystrokes, so we did a lot of that already. And we put in structured Power BI data set, and that, again, Iain will demo that. And simple things which feel like they should be easy, but from a coding and development perspective are actually, more complex, like the ability just to undo anything that you've just done. So that stuff just takes time. And then more importantly, the ability to, once Openbox has created the model, have it come, you can then play around with it in Excel, you can add stuff and then write that back into the Openbox kind of master layer. One of the things that's important to say about Openbox is, when you create a model in Openbox, you don't need Openbox after that if you don't want it. It's a standalone model. You would never know it being written in Openbox. Nobody needs Openbox to open the model. It stands alone after that. But you can, if you want, bring it back in to change it later in Openbox. But in terms of sharing the model, because our hypothesis is that Excel is going to remain the platform for sharing. So nobody wants to have a piece of software where I can't send you the model and have you use it and change it if you don't have Openbox. So it doesn't rely on that. And lastly, wants to make it easy to manage actuals for the FP&A market. So some of the stuff we've already done. We've had really good feedback. We had 150 people in the beta group. Some really nice comments in the wrap-up survey. I hope you don't make it too expensive. It's going to be difficult to make up, to give up. So we had some really great feedback, and again, just to once again thank the beta users. And there's going to be the opportunity during the private beta for anybody to get hold of the software for free for a period of the private beta. So that's kind of the process we've just been through. And before I go on to talk about the kind of vision and where we're going next and the crowdfunding process, maybe I hand over to Iain and he can just show us quickly the software as it stands just now. And we're not going to do a big, like hours demo of it. We're just going to quickly show you the concept. So let me stop sharing and hand over to Iain.
Great, thanks, Kenny. Let me try and share my screen. Okay, so I'm going to do that thing where I say, can you see my screen? Yeah, you can. Okay, good. Okay, good. So thanks, Kenny. As Kenny said, I'm going to do a quick demo. We're not going to go on a long, involved run through of the software, just where we started from, where we've got to, and how we responded to some key pieces of feedback we've had from people. And so let's start with where we came from. So this is a screenshot of the interface of the software when we started the beta process. And I think the comment we had from people was, it's fine, it's functional, but a little bit old-fashioned maybe. What are these buttons on the side? Not clear. There's controls all over the place. And so what we did was we've moved to a much more modern ribbon type interface like you'd see in an Office application. So I'm just going to flip to the new interface. So this is how the model looks now. So we've cleaned everything up. We've put all the controls up in this ribbon. It's just a ribbon like in Excel, so you can
very swish.
Yeah. So we've had people like, we said, what should we make it look like? And they said, just make it look like Excel. Give it a ribbon. So we did. And I know some of you have seen this before, so apologies. I'm going to just run through for people who haven't seen it before, what the different bits of the screen are. So you've got your controls up the top here, your menu, and then Openbox separates the model into the outputs and the inputs and calculations. And so we start with the outputs. We start with what's the purpose of the model. And those are defined on the left-hand side in these reports. So you've got a P&L here, and this is all customizable. This is just our kind of standard template that we start with. And you've got P&L. If I click down here, you've got a balance sheet, very simple balance sheet, cash flow. And I can do things like set the timing of those. And I can drag those up and down and customize it. And over here, you've got the calculations and the inputs. And each of these lists is a sheet in your model, or will be a sheet in your model. So you've got an input sheet, time sheet, an operations sheet, financial sheet, a check sheet, come back to that one. And each of these white boxes or yellow boxes are a calculation block. So you've got a start date for the model, just the very simplest one, number of months per period, and so on. You've got the date of each period starts, and you've got things like in the financials, you've got the cash. What's my cash balance? So that's the kind of layout. And each of them, you'll see each of them has little icons on it. I'll come back to those in a minute. And this is one of the views. Kenny mentioned different views of the model. So one of the things about Openbox is it allows you to see your model in lots of different ways. You can see it in the Excel way for sure, and we'll see that in a minute, but you can also see it in this kind of high level helicopter view where you see all the different sheets and sections and blocks in your model, and you can just move stuff around. And one of the things we've had feedback on is make it easy to see where stuff is going. So stuff now moves out the way, for those of you who saw the old interface, moves out the way to allow you to see where you're going to drop stuff. So you can just structure
that one, because that took ages to code. That mechanism of having stuff moving.
There was pain in there. We'll leave that alone. Yeah, I think one of the feedbacks of this process has been how easy stuff is to describe has no relationship to how easy it is to do. I think that's probably true of financial modeling as well, but it's certainly true of software. Yeah, clients can have very simple requests which turn out to be horrendous. Right, and anyway, so this is the kind of overall view, but you can also zoom in on what Kenny called the focus view. So let's say that I'm looking at my model here, and this is actually a draft of the model we used for our own financial projections for Openbox. So this is the, I think it's the final one, but it's the sort of how did we come up with whether we can get this company to make money and be sustainable. So suppose I wanted to analyze how revenue is made up. So I click on revenue, and then I go up here, toggle display mode. You'll see it's got a keyboard shortcut, and you could use keyboard shortcuts, but I'm going to use the menus for now because it's easier to see what's going on. So just toggle, and it zooms in here to show you precedence and dependence. So what this tells me is you've got revenue. Any questions in the Q&A, by the way, while I'm here, or anything on the chat that I should be?
Nope,
We're
all good. All good. All right.
Do you see anything, Kenny? No, I think we're all good. Do just pop any questions or comments.
Yeah.
If there's anything, then we'll.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So look, so this is the revenue, and revenue is driven by, as you'd expect, number of customers and revenue per customer. Makes sense. And it drives cash income and payment and license processing costs. So this is how much we pay.
It's also showing the sheets that those things are on. Sorry to interrupt you. And just,
no.
You know, I like this view, but like I said earlier, because it's just not something that's easy to see in Excel. If you ever try to trace precedents and trace dependents, you know, it's something we do all the time as modelers. And this brings it all together in one view. And you can see what different sheets these things are coming from to feed this calculation. I think that's a super useful view.
Right, and that's really consistent. The feedback we've had, lots of people say, I really like this view. I like the ability it has to move me around the model. And let me say what I mean by that. So you've got revenue here, got number of customers. Suppose I want to investigate number of customers. I just double click on that, and it recenters the number of customers. And now I can see the precedence and dependence for that. So number of customers drives revenue and support costs and customer churn. Okay, that all seems sensible. Flick back to revenue. And you're probably wondering what these little icons are. So these little icons in the text show you information about the block. And you see, first of all, if I mouse over, it shows me the formula. That formula is also in the formula bar, so I can see the formula for anything. It also shows me the units, and these units are in red because it's telling me that it thinks I might have made a mistake with the units, and I have, because average monthly recurring revenue per customer should be euro per customer, not in euro. And so when it multiplies by customers here, it's getting a bit confused. It also tells me whether, so you can vary, you can have arrays or categories for things, and it's telling me there's no arrays or categories for this one. It's over here, it's got a little icon in the top telling me there's a comment, and I mouse over, it tells me what the comment is. It's telling me that people pay up front for this. I won't have any debtors, and that's why debtors is 0 in the model. Moving over here to number of customers, you've got the little balance icon, which tells me that's a balance. That'll be a corkscrew when it goes to Excel, opening and closing and movements. This one is a constant, which is a dot. This input is a flow, is a series, and I can flip it from one to the other. So if I want to flip it like that, change my mind about whether I want price to vary over time, for example, very easy to do here. So you get a lot of information about what each line item is from these icons, and the colors also. White tells me this one is fine. This kind of pale color tells me it's an input. A more yellow color tells me it's a bit of a warning about that one, and so on. Just flip back. Okay, so that's kind of all very nice, but one of the other really important views is just to actually see the thing as a spreadsheet. So if I go to the spreadsheet menu and click preview, what Openbox will do is it'll do a quick build without some of the more time-consuming formatting, and just create a spreadsheet down here. So it's got a spreadsheet here, which has got a report, and it's a fully calculated spreadsheet. So you can check the numbers. You can check the numbers in your model, check the results, make sure they make sense. And we found that really useful for people as they go through the model build process. And you can navigate around by clicking up in this view here. So if I want to see what the spreadsheet calculation is for tax losses, I just click on tax losses and it appears. So I can just eyeball the numbers there, make sure I'm happy with them. Could also get this new little graph feature. So if I hit F11, it shows me a little graph showing, these are the tax losses used in period. And that makes sense because no tax losses used at the start when we're still not making losses. Oh, we're making some profit here, making some profit. Oh, we've run out of tax losses. So we're having to pay tax at this point. So you can just very quickly eyeball the numbers in the model and make sure that it makes sense. I think that's something we've heard people say is super useful. So then once you're happy with it, you just click Spreadsheet Build to Excel. Just click to Excel. Now it does a whole bunch of checks at this point that it doesn't do for the preview. So it takes a little bit longer. And it's going to warn me about some of those in a minute. It's going to tell me I've put an embedded constant, one of my formulas. That was a bit naughty, but I'm just going to ignore that. So now it's writing all the formulas to Excel. And you'll see in a minute, that one of the other things it does is it writes a named range for every formula, every calculation block there. Now that's an optional thing. And why does it do that? Well, one of our users said, I like to include macros in my models, and those macros need to refer to calculations in the model, cells in the model. I like to have named ranges for everything, so I can easily refer to them. So we put them in. Entirely optional. If you're a person who hates named ranges, just leave them out. Okay, so here's the model created. And I'll just flip to the model. So as Kenny said, totally standard Excel model. I can now send this to you, and you don't have to have Openbox at all. So it's just a standard fast model. I'm not going to go into the details of that, but just it's all standard Excel formulas. One of our other user feedbacks was we want to get data in, and I'll talk to you about getting data in. We can now do that from zero, from pivot tables. We can now get data out to Power BI. That's what I was trying to say. So what it optionally adds to the model is a sheet with every single calculated value in the model in a table that's in a format readable by Power BI. So I can just upload this to Power BI, and Power BI will instantly recognize this table, and I can graph everything really quickly. And because it's all live and linked to the formulas, if I update things in the model, the Power BI will update too. So yeah, one of the other, I'm not going to show this now, but one of the other things we can do is we can go and start typing. Kenny, don't watch this part. You know. So I can say, right, I want to add a new calculation in here. I want to calculate the NPV. So I'm going to be very. I can just add this in quickly. So I'm adding a new calculation here when I'm doing my project cash flows. Just do a quick NPV, I don't know, 10%. So what I can now do is I can mark these as new or modified, and then I can read them back into Openbox. And Openbox will translate that into a box in the Openbox screen. It'll do all the validation checks. So I've been really sloppy about how I put these formulas in. It'll sort that out. It'll say, okay, so you've done it this way, you should have done it that way. And when I write it back, these will all be nicely formatted. So you can do that.
Cool. That was my next question, was how do you write it back? Yeah. So
you hit edit. I mean, that's because that's quite a complicated process. I'm not going to show it in this short demo, but you can now do that. And in fact, people have been writing things back a lot. They like being able to bring stuff in.
We have a question from AK wanting to know about the more, I think when you were on the other screen, when you were actually in the Openbox layout screen, about how customizable those calculation blocks are. So he said, for example, there's different regulations across different countries. So how easy is it to introduce new parameters to model a particular way of calculation for different interests?
Sure. So the answer is they're totally customizable. We've been really clear that we offer calculation blocks to help people, but we're very much not in the business of saying this is the way you have to do it and we know how to do it. So I can go back to Openbox and I can just type, here's the formula. Say I wanted to change my
line. Like say you wanted to add some consulting revenue in, right?
Yeah. So I just say add plus consulting revenue. Okay, and Openbox has added that to the formula. It's added a new placeholder which says you've used this thing called consulting revenue. You haven't told me what it is, so I'm just going to put a placeholder in for it for now. So it's totally customizable.
Cool.
Then you would define that calculation, or you would move it to the input sheet, or whatever you want to do with it. But Openbox has handled it as a placeholder because it's in a calculation, but it's not defined.
Totally customizable.
I think we use placeholders a lot for that kind of thing. So, and the other kind of value proposition about Openbox is standard components, right? So, if you want to just show bringing in let me just go. This is the whole use case that we when we're building models, 70% of the model is stuff that we've built before. It's a debt tranche or it's a revenue structure that we've built before. So having that saved as a component, I can just bring in a whole debt tranche or just add a second debt tranche really easily that's exactly the kind of, this is how we speed things up, so that we're not building stuff from scratch, but yet we have a clean, new, error-free model to start from.
Right. And talking of debt tranches, so here's our kind of skeleton project finance model: income statement, cash flow, and balance sheet. There's no senior debt in this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring in a component that does senior debt. So I go to here, I go to import component. Again, there's a keystroke for this, and this gives me a list. This is my library of all the things that I can find. And I'm going to pick this one, senior term debt with balance check. And I bring that in. So it gives me a little preview. And I've got my Zoom window in the way. A preview of what I'm going to bring in. So I bring that in, pop, there it is. It's brought that in. I now have a new sheet called finance. I've got a new flag called senior term debt. So there's my senior term debt. And what I can do is I send that to the inputs, validate this, and build that model. So now I have we'll have in a minute or two a model with that. Yeah, that's fine. Don't care about that. So that's just it warning me I've left stuff in this kind of to-do list area here, and I haven't put it anywhere. Okay. So there we go. So there's my model. Move that out of the way. Okay, and I can do that. I can bring in other components, so and I can customize them. So suppose I wanted to have multiple debt tranches. I just tell it. I can just say, okay, I want to have new debt tranches and replicate this component 3 or 4 times. So it's very, very easy to customize and to bring in these components. And you see, actually, it's brought in. The other thing it's done is, one of the feedback we had from our users was they want to be able to check stuff. So speed is nice, but getting the right answer is nice too. And so what we've done is each model has a set of checks, and components have their own checks. So when I brought in the senior debt one, it's got a little check in here to make sure I never over repay my debt. The debt never goes negative. And that comes with the component. And when you bring in the component, it gets wired into the master check sheet. So if I go down to the master check sheet down here, that has 2 checks on it down the bottom here. The balance sheet check to make sure the balance sheet balances and the debt's never negative. And those both get wired in, and they'll be shown in the top of every sheet and the error checks number. So every component contains its own checks, and those are now linked up automatically, which is something that people are really keen on. I think I probably talked for long enough, unless there's questions.
Good.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions.
How are circularities handled? So you can create a circular model, and Openbox will warn you about the circularity, and it will offer to break the circularity for you and put in a copy and paste macro so that you can do that. You can have that model, iterate over the values until it. Do you mind if that takes a minute or two, Lance? So I know we've only got limited time. At the moment, all we do is let's say we wanted to bring in revenue. So at the moment, we use a little add-in called Scott's add-in, and that has little user-defined formulas that you can bring in data from zero in. So you can type those directly in Openbox, or you can copy and paste them from Excel. So let's suppose I wanted to have this one. So I bring in, so it brings in, so my organization, so my org, the account ID, period, and so on. So you put that in, and then when you go into Openbox, it puts you into Excel. It puts that formula in, and that uses the Scott's add-in to pull the data from zero. Let me just, when you publish Power BI.
Go on. Yeah, so I was going to say, Adrian's asking if can Openbox be used to create documentation to supplement the model? And that was a request from during the beta process that we actioned, because those views, especially the focus big picture view, those can be separately generated and put into documents, into PowerPoint or Word, so that you can save those views and share those exactly as you say for people that don't have Openbox.
Right.
One thing that's on the development path is a free reader application, so that if you've built a model in Openbox and you're sharing it with someone who doesn't have Openbox, they can get a free reader, so that they can see all those views alongside the model in Excel. But they don't have to see it that way. They can use it as a normal model, but as an added option to be able to allow people to see those views dynamically. Whereas obviously, if you export to a document, it's going to be a static view.
Right. Yeah. So Adrian, there's in Openbox here, you've got stick it in PowerPoint, and that's a clickable PowerPoint, so you can click around, and there's hyperlinks between the slides, so you can click around a bit like the focus view in PowerPoint or PDF, in fact. Document in Excel, just a list of the formulas, document in Word. So yeah, that documentation is a big thing. What's our website link?
Yeah, I was about to post. You don't have one yet, do you?
Well, I mean, it's you can go to gridlines.com. It's part of Gridline.
Yeah, I've just posted a link. It's on the Gridlines page. Yeah,
thank you.
Really.
AK is asking about debt sculpting, normally done via VBA. Is this included in some packages? When we ship Openbox, we ship a lot of components with it, and again on the development path is kind of a community exchange platform to be able to share components. Because certainly within our team, us all having a library of components is super useful, and then we're going to do a lot of components. We will never know every single use case for every single business and every tax jurisdiction in the world, so we won't be able to cover the universe of possibilities. But the idea of having an exchange where you can find components, share components, and even sell components is on the development path. Because I think Openbox is all about the components.
Right, and in fact, one of the menus we have in Openbox is a make menu. It's super easy to make your own components, and that's a deliberate choice. You just select the bits of Excel you want and click make, and then it makes a component for you out of that bit of Excel. So if you've got a nice bit of your model and you want to, find the best model you have that does some particular thing, make a component out of that, and then use it across the team.
Cool.
Good.
Should we press on?
I probably talked for long enough. Yeah.
Questions because I'm conscious of time. Great. Okay. So shall I pick up again?
Yeah.
All right. Let me do the screen sharing thing. Bear with me. All right. Hopefully we're there. All good?
Yeah, all good.
All right, so our vision for Openbox. What we started working on is including natural language processing. And we would like to see a world where we can just talk to Openbox and say, right, hey, Openbox, extend the timeline by 3 years, add another tranche of debt. Because the kind of universe of things that we're doing is pretty definable and usable. Change currency to euro, consolidate the revenues. So we're layering in to try and help people to focus on what you want to do and get away from hours spent banging out stuff in Excel, and still get an Excel model at the end. So that's not going to be next month that we get that working, but we already have the kind of components that we can use to try to build that in. And so that's on the that's ultimately where we see this going in the longer term. We think it'd be great just to be able to kind of speak to your model and tell it what you want to do, and then that also be learned, the kind of machine learning in there to understand what you want and interpret it and apply it in the model. And we think that's ultimately kind of the ultimate power of where this software can go. Like I say, that's not going to be tomorrow, but that's kind of where we want to be. Our current development roadmap. So we've got this beta tested kind of minimum viable product. We think it works. The underlying model build engine is good. We've implemented the quick wins. We can ingest whole models and that are already in Excel and have Openbox read them in. And then our immediate priorities are further improvement of the UI, usability and ease of use is obviously key. One of the things we want to do is be standards agnostic. It's no surprise that I'm a big fan of fast. I've been for years, but we want Openbox is not going to be just about building fast models. So in the next version, we're already working on it so they can output to Smart, to BPM. Iain's already talked about name ranges. Some people love name ranges in their model. I don't, but some people do. And so if you want to name range the world out of that thing, then you're free to do that. And Openbox will include all the name ranges. So we're going to be starting we're on a development sprint on some of that stuff leading up to the end of this year. And then we're going to have a public beta beginning in January for 6 months, where the software will be completely free for anybody to use for a period of 6 months, where we want to kind of get more feedback, test these new functions. And that's part of why we're doing the crowd round, is to build out our development team over that 6-month period while we're still pre-revenue, and kind of accelerate the development. We feel like we're at the stage where we've kind of proven the hypothesis with users. We've validated the concept, and now we're ready to kind of pick up the speed a bit. But we still feel like we want to make further improvements before we start charging for it. So it will be a 6-month period, and then we will be charging after that. So we'll certainly email everybody who's interested from this session and from our own mailing list and so on, who wants to know about that when that's ready. And beyond that first version, then it's more around the natural languaging, around introducing Monte Carlo and stochastic modeling, because there's no, the packages to do that, they're frankly ridiculously expensive. And we think there's kind of core functionality that could be just put into Openbox just to say, right, instead of this being an input, I want this on a normal distribution, or, and so you can start to run on Monte Carlo on those. And then the kind of app store concepts of allowing people to share, or potentially, if users want this, to sell components. So that's where we're going in the kind of long term. We're raising 400,000 euros just after Christmas and a crowd round. We've got a match funding offer from Enterprise Ireland, which is about to go through their investment committee. And our plan is to use that money to see us through the kind of development, the next year's development phase for the technology, spending more money on the onboarding and the support, because we think that's critical. And the support function is, it needs to be well-informed support, right? The support needs to be from modelers, so that that needs to be really expert support. So we want to get all of that right. So that's our, that's where we're going. And the big question is, it's an interesting one, right? Because we build models for a living, right? And we're used to doing valuations on big projects. But when it comes to how do you value this, right? That's the question we've been kind of scratching our heads on, saying, well, we don't, it's pre-revenue. I think it's worth a lot, but it doesn't really matter what I think. How do you value a pre-startup revenue, a pre-revenue startup, sorry. And we've kind of come at that from, well, what do we need and what are we willing to give away, right? So we're willing to give away kind of 20% of the company for the 400,000 euros. So, 10% for the crowd round and 10% to Enterprise Ireland, who are matching the crowd round. So that puts us at a 1.6 million pre-money valuation for this software. So what I'd like to do, Danielle, if you would help me out, is just ask what you think of that, right? Because, we're basing it not on the revenue projections, because we could make up anything for that, right? We could tell ourselves any story about the revenue, but we've kind of based it on, well, this is what we need to get through the next year until we're revenue generating. This is what we're willing to give up, and that gives us a 1.6 pre-money. What do you think?
We're getting some responses through. Yeah, bit of varying results. So Kenny would like your feedback on whether you think the Openbox valuation for the crowd round, whether you think it's too low, about right, or if you're smoking crack and it's way too high.
I'm starting to regret making that an option, Danielle.
Let Kenny know what you think. We might just give it another couple of minutes. I think people are going to think about that a little bit more.
This guy said, well, look,
fair enough. Fair enough.
We hit that a bit suddenly, didn't we?
Yeah. There's a couple of questions on there. Do you want to have
Let's do that whilst the polls are coming in. Yeah.
While we're waiting. Michael would like to know if conceptual pricing is available. Any ideas on that yet?
Conceptual pricing.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Like roughly, do you know what the pricing?
Do we know what we think we're going to price?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so we think it's about €100 a month, or like €1,000 a year paid up front. Is we, with the ongoing value proposition being of continued kind of component release, obviously continued software update. That's kind of where we think. That's kind of where we think the value is. If I think about what does it do in terms of speeding up how I build models and what we, charge to build models, I think there's a lot of value at that price point. But again, I'd be interested to hear if people think we're smoking crack with that price as well.
Stefan would like to ask if you could expand a little bit more on how you came up with that valuation.
Yeah, I mean, so like it's a great question, and like I said, we kind of did it top down of saying, well, we did a kind of, here's what we need in terms of technology spend and onboarding spend over the next kind of year, and we given the traction that we've got so far, are of the view that we'll be revenue generating mid next year, in terms of selling the software, and so we said, well, we kind of need 400,000. We had a match funding from Enterprise Ireland already for 200,000, so a crowd round for 200, and we're willing to give up 20% of the company for that. So it was really based on that metric of saying, well, this is what we need. We feel like 20% is a reasonable giveaway for that, and it sounds like we may have got that about right. So that's so there's no more science to that, because we could do discounted cash flows all day long and justify any valuation we want. And some days I wake up and think we're going to sell 2 licenses a year and that's going to be it. And sometimes I think I should just put my deposit down in the Tesla right now because we're going to be rich. And I have no idea, right? So I just don't know which way it's going to go. We think it's good, but we're a little bit biased. So we kind of base the valuation on this is the cash that we need for the next year to get the software to where it needs to be. And a 6 month, we wanted to continue to make it free for 6 months because we want that, the last few months have been so useful in terms of the 150 people who've been using it, have given us such great ideas and stuff we never would have come up with ourselves. So that's been so valuable. So we want to expand that out, have more people, use the software. We feel it's really usable now. It's really at a stage where it's really productive to use it. So yeah, that's how we came up with the valuation. Dragon's Den style. Any other questions on that?
There's a couple of comments. I might let you guys tackle those. Bailey says it's brilliant, keep going. Yeah, I might let you guys decide if you want how to answer the other ones.
Okay, I'll just kind of press on a little bit and just tell you about the crowdfund round, and then we're going to kind of bring the presentation part to a close. So here's the steps, right? So one of the things that we're going to be doing is being completely transparent about all the steps. We're going to publish our financial model. We're going to publish our financials about Openbox completely transparently. It's called Openbox for a reason, right? And so early November, Enterprise Ireland are going to go to IC on the match funding. And we're also going to be getting, for people outside of the UK, HMRC EIS clearance may not mean anything, but HMRC is the UK tax authority. And EIS is a tax break for investing in early stage companies, where you can write the investment off against tax. So we'll be getting that clearance, so that certainly the UK based investors can write off their investment against their taxes. We're just about to sign our engagement letter with Seeders. So we're going to be doing the crowd round on Seeders. And so we'll be in the next few weeks completing that setup, so that in late November, we're going to open the pre-registration. so that people can pre-register for the round with an indication of how much they may be interested in committing. And then, the full crowd round will launch in Christmas. After Christmas. Cedars told us don't even think about trying to raise money over Christmas. Just leave it till January. So we're following their advice. They've done this once or twice, and so we'll start the full round in January. The way that crowdfunding works is that unless we hit our target, nobody's committed. And that's true of Enterprise Ireland, because they're doing match funding, so they will match whatever we raise through the crowd round. We have a couple of anchor investors already, so we have some of that 200 already committed. So we'll not be launching from zero. In the happy instance that we have commitments over 200, we're happy to dilute further. That's kind of the process from here, and that's kind of the end of my slides. So, the pre-registration will happen in November, and then we'll be launching the full round in January. And at pre-registration stage, you can get hold of the kind of current version of the software, as I say, for free, and free for the next the kind of first 6 months of 2021 as part of that public beta process.
And how is that involved with Full Stack Modular? Is that part of the whole thing?
Yeah, it's a great question. So yeah, we'll be teaching Openbox as part of Full Stack Modular, but also we'll be teaching other modular model build tools. So we'll be showing Openbox because
very agnostic. Yeah.
Say again?
It's completely agnostic. Full
Stack is agnostic. I'm obviously horribly biased, but Full Stack is agnostic. In terms of technologies, the whole point of Full Stack is to teach all of the available modeling technologies, and then people make up their own mind. So it will be one of the technologies that's taught as part of Full Stack, and there will be standalone onboarding teaching for people who just want to get hold of the software who are not doing Full Stack. So it'd be a big part of Lance's technology teaching in Full Stack Modeler, because the whole concept there is equipping people across the full range of modeling technologies.
And keeping up to date with all of these new technologies is not easy. Yeah.
So other questions, Danielle? Can you help me out? What we not answered?
Yeah, there's a couple, but I'll let you attack those. I think, Iain.
Okay, am I still on? Okay, so Stephen's saying pricing 100 a month for 1,000 a year sounds a little high for small organizations, mainly larger corporations. So I think that's one of our target markets, but we do see that there's a lot of people in smaller organizations who might find this useful. So, I mean, look, we're still thinking about the pricing. We're still thinking about, what support gets bundled with that. So those are initial numbers for now. If it seems like sensible to us to offer a pricing for smaller firms, then I think we'll do that. Kenny, I'm going a bit off piece there, but I hope that's all right. Okay, so publish to Power BI and data from SQL. How do we combine them? So I think your question is about how do you get data in from different sources from SQL, and how do you get data out to Power BI, and how does that all work? So the way it works is that Openbox creates the Excel model. You can then tell it to link to data you've imported, and then you can then push that whole lot up to Power BI. I'm not sure quite what you're asking about that question, but I'm guessing there. But I hope that does it. Yeah. Sebastian, hi Sebastian. Please describe the component sharing platform. So I think we're at the pretty conceptual stage, early stage for the platform. We have a kind of app store in our heads, a way for people to share components between them, and possibly to offer them for sale if they want to do that. Will there be a quality review by the Openbox team? Possibly, although we certainly don't want to say that everything offered there will have to be reviewed by us. I think we're not the arbiters of truth at the point of truth in the financial modeling community. We're going to provide a platform, but I don't think, Kenny, I'm looking at you here, that we're going to sign off every component.
If you were publishing components is this is the, this is how you model a renewable, tax for a renewable project in Guatemala. I have no idea if that's correct or not, and I'm not going to find out. But what we can do is say this component works with Openbox and is kind of technically compliant. But in terms of its commercial correctness, is that word, and applicability, that's not something we probably would take a view on. Having said that, what we're exploring is pre-audited components, so that there's a third-party auditor who can audit components on the store. So that's something we're going to work on as we develop that concept. But yeah, we don't have that. I mean, that platform doesn't exist just now. So that's completely
in our heads somewhere.
In all honesty.
Yeah. Okay, Michael, how about you evaluate using Kim Warren's strategic management dynamics principles? It's a good idea. I actually know Kim, so I'll get in touch with him and ask him about that. Thank you, Michael. How did you go about getting involved with Enterprise Ireland? Well, Daniel said we're from the UK. I actually live in Ireland these days. Openbox is an Irish company, which is why the financial model's in euros. And we've been taken on as what Enterprise Ireland calls a high performance startup. And that means that, subject to lots of approvals, they'll put in money. They've already put in a few tens of thousands into the company, and they're subject to us getting some private funding. They'll put in further money in terms of match funding. So it's being based in Ireland. It's the short answer to that one. It's all right. The accent doesn't give it away,
On the structuring thing, it also have a UK subsidiary because that lets us access the HMRC tax benefit.
Right.
I believe that Cedars is a pan-European platform, so certainly any European country can invest there. I believe it's also clear for investments from overseas. That's my understanding. Somebody had asked about US investing, so I think that's all absolutely possible through the Cedars platform.
Yeah, great.
Philip is asking about, is Openbox based on VBA?
No, it's based on .NET.
Great.
Okay. Is that it?
Is that it? Have we missed any?
Was there anything else that you wanted to cover?
Just to say, look, we with Danielle and your permissions, we'll perhaps follow up with when the pre-registration page goes live.
Sure. When will that be?
Yep, that will be next month. So the pre-registration page will go up next month, and then the full round begins in early January. Okay,
great. Well, I normally send out a link with the recording. With an email, I'll probably do that tomorrow, so we can add some links in there, and then we can send out an invitation when it becomes available.
Super, that's great.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That was really
thanks for having us.
Yeah, it was a interesting sort of little peek under the hood at the process, not only the software itself, but the whole process of the startup is quite fascinating for people. So you kind of got two for the price of one with that. So thank you so much, guys.
Thanks, Iain.
And I am looking forward to next week. So next week, our speaker is me. I'm going to be doing a solo on budgeting and forecasting. So I'm very much looking forward to that. So